Planning Commission and Sioux Falls City Planning Commission, and we'll begin with just a few introductory remarks. This meeting is being streamed live, and when adjourned and posted, it'll be available at any time at lincolncountysd.org. The order of events tonight will be as follows. For each public hearing, staff will introduce the agenda item and present a summary of the staff report. The applicant will then be asked to explain their proposal in further detail and to answer any questions from the County Planning Commission and the City Planning Commission. We'll then open the floor to public comment, first for persons in support of the application and for persons in opposition of the application. When you step to the podium, please state your name and address and speak into the microphone. Please limit your comments to less than 5 minutes. Decisions on conditional use permit applications may be appealed to the County Board of Commissioners by submitting a letter to the County Planning and Zoning Office within 5 business days. Thank you. We'll first do roll call. City Chair. Has a quorum been, City Chair Kiddums, the quorum has been established by the county.
We have quorum too.
Okay, very good. All right. Is there a motion from the County Planning Commission to approve the meeting minutes?
So move, Green.
Second, Sweeter.
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. City Chair Kiddums?
Aye. On the city side, do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Motion for approval, Fisher?
Second, Norman.
All those in favor, please say yes.
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 All right, motion carries.
All right, we'll now ask for a motion from the county side to approve the meeting agenda.
So moved. Boots.
Second, Green.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. City Chair Kiddums?
All right, on the city side, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda, Norman.
Second, Fisher. All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say yes. All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
Okay, next thing, we'll open the floor to public comment on anything that is not on the agenda. So if there's anybody that wants to speak on anything that is not listed on the agenda, please come forward now. Okay, seeing none, we're going to close the floor to comment on non-agenda items, and we're going to start with, I believe, agenda item number 1. Mr. Brown.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Toby Brown, representing County Planning. This item for you this evening is an application for a conditional use permit for a telecommunications tower. Subject property is approximately half mile northwest of the intersection of 471st and 271st Avenue. This would be the northeast quadrant of the T interchange. Subject property is zoned I-1 light industrial. It is developed with a building on it that is utilized primarily for a contractor shop. Subject property is being leased to the applicant, approximately a 53 by 50 foot, 5-foot portion to the northwest portion of the lot, and would be utilized then for the construction of a 130-foot monopole telecommunications tower, primarily utilized for wireless communication facilities. So the applicant did submit this application. Staff did work with the applicant to identify compliance with the regulations, compliance with FAA regulations, as well as what's unique about this particular property, as some of you are aware, is that the county and the city are going to be receiving updated flood maps, hopefully within the next few months. This particular property currently does not have any floodplain on it, but with the new revised floodplain mapping, it would. And so we did work with city staff and the applicant to go through the process to identify construction techniques and ability to utilize the property for that. All of that has been reviewed and approved by city and county staff, but that'll be part of the building permit process. So as noted in the staff report, is this particular use in the I-1 Light Industrial Zoning District is a permitted special use if the applicant utilizes stealth design, which would be disguised or concealed tower. The applicant chose not to do that, so that triggers the conditional use permit that was applied for this evening. So staff did post a property in compliance with the ordinance, have received no comments from adjoining properties regarding this particular application. Staff does recommend approval of this application. As noted in the staff analysis, is that this application is consistent and compatible with the regulations for a telecommunications tower in the I-1 Light Industrial District. So staff does recommend approval with the conditions that were listed in the staff report as shown on the screen. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll turn the floor back to you and answer any questions that the board has at this time.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Brown. Is there any questions from the county side? Any questions from the city? Okay, I guess none for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Okay, could I ask the applicant to come forward, please? State your name and address for the record and tell us a little bit about what you want to do.
My name is Rick Adams. My address is 1635 East Ponto Lake Road, Northwest, Bacchus, Minnesota, 56435. So I'm a zoning consultant for several tower companies and carriers. I work primarily for Verizon Wireless. This is my third zoning meeting this week, so I've been doing it for 30 years, so that's why I don't have any hair left. But anyway, the applicant in this case is TowerCo. They're an independent tower company that builds towers and monopoles to rent to any licensed carrier that needs the space. Their anchor tenant is Verizon. Verizon's the one that their RF engineering staff is the one that identified the need to place this facility here, and the need is for capacity reasons. There are two reasons to build a new wireless facility. One is coverage. They lack coverage in a certain area. And then when we get into more urban city settings, then there's additional sites needed to be put in for capacity. And you could pretty much tell the difference because a coverage site is typically about 300 feet tall. Coverage sites are usually 180 feet or less. I've worked on some other coverage sites like with the city, with Washington High School. I worked on that for a number of years to get that passed through city zoning. Wasn't any fun, but we got it done. This one should be a lot less controversial because it's in the middle of an industrial park. There were some issues that came up. We are aware, of the proximity to the county airport. Verizon had started working on this site about 5 years ago. We had picked a different site and done a lot of analysis. The site was a little bit closer to the airport, and they did get FAA approval for 90 feet at that site. However, this site is further away. That site fell through. It got held up because of COVID and C-band, the FCC C-band auctions, which sucked a lot of money out of the carriers for growth. So it delayed this project quite a bit. What happens is with the carriers is they have their RF engineering staff that's dedicated to a certain geographic area, review every tower that's in that system quarterly. And with their reports, they can determine how many attempted calls were made that weren't processed, how many calls that were processed that maybe dropped before they went to the next cell. Because if you had capacity in one cell to carry the call and the next cell was full, the call will drop. It won't transfer to the next cell. So they run those quarterly reports and they see where there's significant blocking and capacity problems. And then they lobby the higher-ups in their companies and the bean counters to spend money to rectify a problem, and it goes through a whole process, and they get the funds allocated, and then a project starts. So it's a process. These sites cost the carrier's a lot of money, even when they have an independent tower company build the tower. There's still a lot of money involved with the equipment. And not only their equipment on site, but their equipment in their switches that talk to any particular site. So they don't arbitrarily build sites. It costs them a lot of money. So when one is sited, they determine there's a real need for it. And that's what Verizon did. They wanted to build this site in 2024, but with the delay in zoning that we've had, got pushed back to 2025. Their 2024 sites they're already building. So they can only get so many sites per year. So when one gets delayed, then they have to push it back and bring a different site forward. Other than that, the TowerCo has done extensive work in this area. I worked with them. I used to be on AT&T staff, and I worked with them on AT&T staff on a lot of sites in the area. They're in the business of building towers to rent, so it's a little bit different when the carrier owns a tower. They sometimes will build a multi-tenant tower. Sometimes they're not that interested in it, helping their competition. But when an independent tower company owns the tower, it's their business to put on the second and third tenant if the space is available. In the past, and I used to own towers and owned a tower company, we tried to anticipate the loading on these towers. And when we were working with 2G and 3G equipment, we were in those scenarios, there's a lot of equipment that was installed on the ground in equipment buildings. But when 4G came along, because of the complexities of all the different frequencies they operate at now, they started putting the radios up on top of the towers. So a lot of towers that built, say 10 years ago, that were built for 4 tenants. With the modern equipment, they might hold maybe 2. A lot of them are only single tenant towers. So sometimes towers are getting replaced that we thought years ago would handle the need for all the carriers in the area. And now with the new equipment, they don't. So that's one of the things about tower ownership is you're always trying to anticipate what the needs are. Not only 5 years down the road, but 20 years down the road. Actually, these towers have a lifespan of about 75 years. So it's hard to anticipate sometimes how much loading you're going to have on there, but they do their best, and they want to get 4 tenants on that tower if possible. This one's a little short to accommodate 4 tenants, but I would think you could accommodate 3 tenants because of the height. When TowerCo did an analysis of this area, their aeronautical engineers determined that they could get approval for up to 200 feet from the FAA. They chose not to apply for 200 feet because the carrier didn't want that much height. And so instead of applying for 200 feet, they did apply for 130 feet plus the lightning rod. And they got FAA approval on that. And of course, the FAA process is a process where their staff looks at the coordinates, looks at the licensed airports in the area and determine their flight paths and determine what's safe and what's not safe. So the FAA determined that this location at 130 feet plus the lightning rod would be safe in that location. Other than that, I guess I won't go any further into all the minutia about telecom unless you have questions about that. But I got a lot of experience, so I can answer most questions.
Very good, thanks. Do we have any questions for the applicant?
I have a question, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
So with your guys' process, were there other sites in this same general area that were also considered?
Right.
and the reason you guys decided on this site specifically?
When you look at these sites, you try to identify sites that are leasable and zonable and constructible. So we had another site identified years ago, but then that land owner with the delay decided to back out. So we went, but the search ring is pretty small. It's only like 2 or 3 blocks. So it's not
that was my
huge
next
search ring. So this is, in fact, this site is a little bit out, just on the north edge, just a little bit out of the original search ring that Verizon had. It was pretty tight because of that area. They want to service this industrial community, and that's what it's meant to serve, is the capacity. The 5G service is be limited to about 1 mile radius. So they should have good connectivity within 1 mile with the 5G frequencies. Now, the 4G frequencies, that'll be operating, the connectivity on this size site would be about 3 to 4 miles.
So with that, is the coverage issue typically just cars on the interstate that are continuing, or is it actually the tenants of the industrial park?
Yeah, it's both. It's both. But, there's so many devices using the wireless services now, and even, fixed wireless is getting to be a big deal because they're starting to service a lot of computers, TVs, cars, not people in the cars themselves. And all kinds of doorbells, all kinds of control devices, security devices, plus cell phones. And even the cell phones themselves, when people are texting or messaging pictures, and sometimes are messaging video, takes up a lot of capacity that in the past, when we were just doing voice, we weren't seeing that much capacity need. And because they need so much capacity, the government's been freeing up different frequencies. I mean, we started out using one frequency, about 850 megahertz, and now they're at 700 megahertz, 850, 1800, 2100, 2300, and all those blocks that they auctioned off, the carriers only got about a 30 megahertz block in those different frequencies, if that, sometimes only 10 megahertz. So when in late 2020, the FCC started an auction of what they call C-band, and that was, and they freed up they were auctioning off about 150 megahertz wide blocks around 3,500 megahertz. And prior to that, 5G was being deployed mostly at about 6 megahertz on small cell sites. And with that auction, a lot of the 5G services have migrated to 3,500 megahertz. And there's a lot of bandwidth there, but all that bandwidth is used for data transfer. Voice still operates on the traditional 4G systems. So they spend a lot of money to handle this data. I mean, it's really imperative for any community to have a good 5G system within their community if their business community is going to thrive. And even people are migrating from, say, Dish TV or Direct TV to all these streaming things like Hulu and YouTube TV. Most of those are being served over the internet, and a lot of internet is going to go to wireless internet because you can only get, especially in a little bit more rural areas, because you're not going to get fiber connectivity to every house in a community through an actual fiber line. You're going to get it typically now through a wireless service.
So with that, I can't remember if it was in 2022, there was conversations between, I believe, wireless carriers and the FAA regarding 5G. Do you know, like, has that all been resolved or any issues associated with it being that close to the
Yeah.
airport?
You know, originally when the FCC licensed off those frequencies, they took a lot of those frequencies away from the satellite TV people, and they auctioned them to the cellular people, and of course they spent a lot of money for those frequencies, so they're gonna use them. And then there was some concern about some aircraft, like a 737 altimeters, operate on some wireless frequencies close to what was auctioned off. And there is some concern between the FCC and the FAA that there is the problem there. There was a potential problem there. It wasn't fully vetted. The FCC said it was. The FAA said that it wasn't. So what they did is any site within like a mile of a major airport, and I'm talking, well, probably the Sioux Falls Airport, not the county airport, that has large jets flying into them. For a while, for like a year, they said if you're building a site within a mile of that airport, don't turn on 5G, these 5G frequencies on the sector that covers that airport. You can do it, typically a site will have 3 sectors and will broadcast about 120-degree bandwidth in 3 different directions. So that one sector they didn't want turned up, and they didn't until they got it fully vetted. Now it's fully vetted, so they've been turning up those frequencies. Because you look like major airports, like in Minneapolis. I live in Minnesota, obviously. Minneapolis, there's Southside's right there on the edge of the airport. So,
Good. Any other questions? Good? Okay. Good? Okay. We might have more for you later, but
That's fine.
thank you so much. Okay. Anybody else in favor of the application want to come forward and speak? Okay, seeing none. Anyone in opposition want to come to the application, come forward? State your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Dave Myers, and I oversee the airport facility management at T Airport, and also I'm a pilot. So just some concerns, and he's correct, the FAA has approved this, but where the location is, just talking about aircraft in general, I don't know if anybody flies here and so forth like that, but you just can't fly into an airport. You have to follow traffic patterns. And the traffic pattern where the tower is kind of like on a downwind, and when the aircraft turn to come into land, it kind of goes right over that area. That airport there is one of the busiest airports in South Dakota. We have a lot of experimental aircraft that fly there. Experimental aircraft meaning that fly a little bit lower than traffic that comes into Sioux Falls and so forth. So there's a lot of that type of traffic. We have a flight school there. Student pilots that see a tower like that, they don't want to hit the panic button or do things that they shouldn't be doing. So it's very concerning to the flight school. And just flying over that is somewhat concerning. So we do have some concerns as an airport.
Okay. Anybody have any questions, comments?
What is traffic pattern altitude there?
The traffic pattern altitude is 800 feet. Once the traffic pattern altitude is 800 feet on downwind, and when you turn your base, you start your descent from probably 800 to 500 to base and into final. So there are some concerns. And with the weather's night, I don't know if it's going to be lighted or not. That's also concerned. Cloud cover is another issue. So there's just a lot of different factors that have been risen in the last 24 hours about that. So.
Okay. I have one question. What's your opinion on the FAA approval of it?
They have different rules and regulations that they have to follow. So, if they approve it, that's, they have formulas and things like that, distances from the airport to the end of the runway. They do that. So, but 130 feet it doesn't seem like it's very much, but there's a tower like south of the airport, 3-4 miles, that when we come into land and so forth, it gets your attention. So like as a student pilot, you're just learning to fly, If you see something like that, you're not paying attention, you're flying, looking at numbers and things like that in the aircraft, who knows what could happen? I would just hate to see something, spin a plane into the ground because of the towers there and so forth like that, so. But we're a busy airport. There's a lot of traffic there. It's a flight school that turns out pilots all the time, new pilots and so forth like that.
Okay. So are you completely in opposition of it, or are you just voicing concern? or-
I do have a concern.
Yeah.
I do have a huge concern.
Do you see-
Opposition, I'm kind of on the fence about that. I see
Okay.
what he's talked about is beneficial to everybody, but as a pilot and student pilots for that airport, I don't want to see someone run into that or, do something like that. That's
Yeah.
just, because that's there.
Is there a different location, in your opinion, that wouldn't be as of
Well,
obstructive?
further away, the better.
I hear you.
So,
I hear that a lot. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, very good. Any other questions?
I do.
Yeah.
Is there much for helicopter operations there that typically wouldn't be following like a dictated traffic?
yeah, we
pattern?
have there's a chopper out there that flies, and also Avera comes in there, Sanford comes in there. They don't significantly come in there a lot, but a lot of their stuff comes in there in the evenings. They go to the heart hospital, so it is used for that. We have one out there that flies around, but he flies around a lot lower than civilian aircraft does.
Is that the red gyrocopters that's over my house almost every evening in the summer?
That's correct. So
Okay.
yes, that's correct. That's him. So we have one of them out there, so. And also, I don't know if you've noticed, but there's some power parachutes out there. And that's kind of been a concern of ours also, and they fly a little bit lower than the aircraft do, so.
All right, very good. Any other questions?
I have a question. What would be reasonable as far as distance that, let's say a student
Yep.
or an administrator, like what would be
Well,
what
3
would be
miles
a-
would be good from the end of the runway there.
And
so.
how far is this one currently?
I don't know what the distance is. Yeah.
1.5? Thank you.
I'll tell you here in just a second. Okay, any other questions? All right, see none? Thank you.
Okay.
We might have more questions for you, but I'm going to answer her question quick before we move on.
Commissioner Scott, you're so techie over there. Look at you.
I mean, from the end of the runway to that site would be 3,600 feet. So just short of a mile, based on my measurement. Okay, just, we don't have a lot of other people here either for or against, and I think it might be beneficial to let the applicant come back up if he wants to add anything. Do you have anything more to add? Okay, yeah, if you want to come back up, and then I'm going to open it up to questions for him again.
Well, we run into this a number of times with people that run airports. They would like to see, a 3-mile zone, no towers within 3 miles of their airport, and that's just not practical. In fact, some cities were fighting. Holdridge, Nebraska is one. They said no towers within 3 miles. Well, if that was a condition that was really enforceable, you wouldn't have a lot of coverage around any major airport, including the one in Sioux Falls. It's just a standard that can't be met because the demand is there. And I hate to get into the law because people don't like it when I start talking about the Telecom Act and the law, but it's a fact of life. In 1996, the federal government, and as a condition the reason why they passed this is because they had another auction for frequencies, and the carriers said, well, we're having too many problems getting sites sited. We need some protection. So they did pass the Telecom Act in 1996, and one of the tenets of it is, one of the major tenets is that any reason cited for denial of a site has to be backed up by substantial evidence. Of course, we get into these meetings, and a lot of times we have people come in and have concerns. They're concerned that the tower is going to interfere with their TV set. They're concerned the tower is going to diminish their property values. And it's fairly typical on a situation like this where the airport director comes in and says, we have a concern for flight safety. And that's why we filed the FAA to get the approval to do this, because they do the measurements and they calculate out, if that tower is going to penetrate the glide zone for any approaches, whether it's VIR or IFR approaches. And I'm a pilot too, so I kind of know, and I grew up, learned by an airport, little airstrip that, had a 400-foot tower by it. So I realized there's some concern there. But when coming here to this meeting, I went over the bridge that kind of goes over kind of the east-west street there that's just south of there. And there's lights on those bridges, and between the bridge and those lights, it's got to be close to 90 feet that they'd have to clear also. So there are obstacles out there already. And I see to the south, there's some big power line towers. So there are obstacles that pilots have to be aware of, that they have to take in consideration when they're flying their aircraft. But they're not, unless they're in an approach, they're supposed to be way above 130 feet. And they better be above 90 feet when they go over that bridge, because they could hit one of those lights on the bridge. So that's one thing, is they say if you're going to deny a site, it's got to be in writing, it's got to be backed by substantial evidence. The other thing that we run into when we talk about 3-mile zones, putting a 3-mile zone around an airport and saying you can't have a cell tower within that 3 miles. Because the one down in Holdridge, Nebraska, we're only talking about 90 feet down there, and they still don't want it. It's almost on the edge of 3 miles. The other thing that the Telecom Act says is you have the authority to make zoning regulations and pass zoning regulations and make decisions, but those decisions can't, one, be based on fears. They got to be based on substantial evidence. But the other thing is they can't effectively prohibit service in an area. So if you ever came up with a zoning ordinance or tried to enforce an ordinance to say we're not going to allow any towers within 3 miles of the airport, that would violate the Telecom Act also. So unless there's substantial evidence of a real problem there, yeah, there's some concern. Now, if you want to mitigate the concern a little bit, you could, and I've done this before on shorter sites that weren't required to have lights, you could put a condition in there that the tower be lit. And then you might want to say that it be lit with a dual lighting system because, people don't like to see strobe lights, daytime or nighttime strobe lights on a tower. And the dual lighting systems cost twice as much as just a single white light system. So to explain that, the dual lighting system, you can leave the tower silver, because most of them are galvanized, and you'd have a daytime strobe on it and a nighttime red light. It'd switch over at night because of photocell. The other option, and we did this because of proximity to a lake that had a seaplane base on it, we painted the pole red and white. Didn't even put a light on it. We just painted the pole red and white because seaplanes don't land on lakes at night. So there are other options to mitigate the problem. And I'm sure the tower code would agree to lighting it if you thought that that would mitigate the problem.
Okay. Does anybody have any questions?
Currently, is the plan to not have a light on it?
Right, the FAA isn't requiring a light. And that's the other thing is sometimes when you're really on the borderline and you're really close, then they themselves will require a light, but they didn't in this case.
Okay.
Is it
But
because
that doesn't mean, but they say if you light it, you know, you can voluntarily light it, but then it's got to follow their FAA obstruction lighting guidelines.
Yep. And what you explained would, this dual light system would.
Yeah, that's what we call a medium intensity dual light system
Okay.
is, you know, when we do towers over 200 feet or towers that need to be lighted, you apply for the lighting system you're going to put on there, and it's right on the statement. So if you look at the FAA approval, there's no lights required. But that doesn't mean you can't do it as a part of your CUP.
Right. All right. Okay. Any other questions? Good. All right. Thank you, sir. Do you have any other comments, Mr. Meyer?
The galvanized are just difficult to see.
Okay.
Horrible, so
What about the lighting proposal? What, does that help or?
it wouldn't hurt anything.
Okay.
So
And so as far as the painting goes, you would prefer if it was to go to be
something colored.
something colored, not galvanized.
I just don't know the dimensions of the tower, like how wide it is or stuff like that. Some of these cell towers are just impossible to see.
To see?
So I don't know if it has guide wires coming off of it or,
No,
so.
no guide wires.
But with the daytime strobe, that would work too.
It's not gonna hurt.
Galvanized and have a daytime strobe on it, there's one in the pilots.
Okay. Do you agree with that? Yep.
That's fair.
Okay, very good. Any questions for Mr. Myers? Okay. Okay. Thanks, guys. I could sit and listen to cell phone tower science. Any chance, what are you doing after the meeting? You wanna come south to Canton and explain a few things to me? I'd honestly really like to talk to you. We have some serious issues, so, down around my place. Okay, so I'm gonna close the floor to public comment, and I think in this situation, I think it'd be good if we just had a little discussion amongst us, maybe before we entertain any motions. Is that fair? Okay, very good. You'll start, Mr. Green?
Yeah, I'll start. So, being a student pilot that's flown in and out of that airplane probably 100 times, that was my initial concern is, and I looked earlier today after looking at the agenda and went to yesterday's flight tracking of a bunch of flights that were in and out of the county airport. And it is directly over the traffic pattern altitude for your smaller Cessnas and Piper aircrafts, which they're using there. So I did have quite a bit of concern regarding, understanding it is a 150 feet tower, about what some of those mitigations were. Because as a student pilot, I'm sure, as you're very much aware, sir, trying to multitask as well as, having your instructor in your ear and doing all of this, and it is easy to drop 100, 200 feet pretty quickly without even realizing it while you're trying to maintain airspeed and do all this other stuff. So I did have quite a bit of concern regarding that. I do appreciate the openness regarding other mitigation factors that exist, potentially the lighting system. I guess my assumption was that there would have been a lighting system on it anyway. So I think that's probably where, in my mind, to mitigate it with something like some sort of lighting system, understanding that does then put it under the FAA requirements to meet certain things. But that would make at least me more comfortable. So.
Okay, very good. Anybody else down there?
I think he said it best.
Okay.
I assumed there was a light on top of the tower too when we were talking about this, and
Yeah.
I think that would mitigate any kind of problem, and obviously they don't seem to have a problem with adding that light onto the tower if we put that in with our conditions, so.
to be honest, with ForeFlight, that's just more people on the tower, right? And using ForeFlight myself through my iPad, like I appreciate the additional service there, but I was initially concerned with the location over the traffic pattern because it is, right when you're looking to turn downwind to base, so. Yeah.
Comments? What are you guys' thoughts?
I guess I can go ahead and start, and I'll jump to the conclusion and just say, Madam Chair, I'll be supporting this item tonight. As a property attorney, I would tell you that nothing scares me more than a client coming to me and saying, I need FAA approval for whatever I need to do. That's because FAA approval is extremely, extremely difficult to get. It's an arduous process. It takes a long time. And this issue that we're dealing with here, I think, falls within the scope of their review. I'm not an expert on that, and that's why we've had various issues that have come before the Planning Commission in the past, and FAA approval's been brought up. And if you don't have it, then probably not in support of what you want to do. But if you do, those guys know what they're doing, and I know they have looked at this. So for those reasons, I'll be supporting this as is.
Okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, I'll be voting in favor of it as well. I think it's, the challenging part is that I don't think the FAA, is aware of every single airport and how every single airport is set up and who's flying there. But I do think that, that those laws are in place for a reason, because this is probably not within our realm to say, unless we're all pilots of what's reasonable and what's safe. I would like to add the condition of the lighting as well, just because I would think that's, I would have assumed that was on, already part of the project as well. So I'll be voting in favor of it.
Anything down there? Okay, well, thanks for the discussion. I agree with all comments, and so for the betterment of the meeting, I won't repeat them. So I guess we're gonna look for I'm looking for a motion for approval, and with that, if whoever moves would like to add condition number 6, with the two-way lighting, add it with your motion, please.
I'll make the motion to approve with the addition of, understanding there is the responsible for compliance with federal, state, and local rules, regulations. I do assume that does mean any FAA regulations associated with whatever that lighting system is. But I would like to add a 6th of adding a lighting system to the tower.
Okay, we've got a motion, we got a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we got a motion and a second on the county side. So I believe, a while since I've done this, do we call the roll on the county and then turn it over? Okay. Commissioner Sweeter?
Yes.
Commissioner Boots?
Yes.
Commissioner Green?
Yes.
Commissioner Scott is also a yes. Okay,
All right, thank you. On the city side, do we have a motion to approve with the additional condition?
Make a motion to approve with the additional 6 condition.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second, Norman.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say yes.
Yes.
All those opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries.
all right, very good. Thank you. Is that it, Toby? Ish? Okay.
So I was going to add, I do consulting, I'm a zoning consultant, so I do consulting for counties, cities, carriers, tower companies, so anytime any of you got any questions, Toby, staff, or any commissioners,
Yeah.
you can call me and I'll try to answer them,
Awesome, appreciate it.
so.
Thanks so
Thank you.
much. Like I said, if you got a little extra time, you can hang out here south of Canton. We'd sure use your services.
Bring your cell coverage meter.
Yeah, yeah. All right. So we're gonna move on. I don't believe we have any unfinished business, I mean, new business, so we're gonna look for a motion for adjournment.
I'll make the motion to adjourn. Boots?
Second, Green?
Okay, it's been moved and properly seconded. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, motion carries. City Chair?
All right, on the city side, do we have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Aye. Yes.
All right, motion carries. We're adjourned.
All right.